One of the most commonly asked questions I get is, how do I start a compost? Today, I'm going to be sharing with you how to get your compost set up and, more importantly, what to put in it.
We are Alex and Elaina, a couple in our mid-20s working towards financial independence and self-sustainability.
Follow our journey as we grow, build, fix, and learn the skills we need to get us there. Before setting up your compost, you're going to need to decide on the main objective for your compost. Are you composting to produce a lot of nutritious soil for your garden? Are you composting to reduce your food waste in the kitchen? Or maybe you're composting so that you have a place for your food and yard scraps, but you're not exactly sure if you're going to use the soil. If you're trying to create a lot of soil for your garden, or you're trying to create a place for yourself to put yard waste, you're going to need a larger area than someone who's just getting rid of food waste specifically. That being said, you don't need a crazy amount of space. You really only need about a 3-foot square area. You can literally just have a standalone pile. You don't need anything fancy, but some people do like to have sides like what we have behind me. If your main goal is to just get rid of food waste and maybe some other small organic material, you might opt for an option that is completely enclosed. You can buy tumbler containers that are completely enclosed, or you can now buy compost bins that double as a planter. This might be a great option for someone in an urban or suburban environment where you might have some restrictions on size, or maybe there's some restrictions through an HOA. For those of you who are living in a city, I recommend looking into worm composting. This might sound a little creepy, but you can buy kits online that are essentially plastic containers with worms in it. And then you go ahead and you put your food in there and they decompose it relatively quickly. This is great for a small space. This is something personally that I plan to start experimenting with, so I will create a video of it when I get the worms. Now that you've decided on the objective of your compost and the setup that you want for your compost, you need to choose a location. So there's 3 things that you need to keep in mind. The first thing is that your compost could attract wildlife, so you probably don't want to keep it really close to your home because of that fact. The second thing is that your compost may smell from time to time. Ideally, if you have a well-balanced compost, you shouldn't have any smells, but keep that in mind as well. The third thing is that you don't want to put your compost too far away from your house. If you plan to put food scraps into your compost, you're definitely going to want to have it relatively close so that you're not walking too far. For us, we actually keep a bin in our sink and we fill that up for about a week, and then we take it out to our compost bin. Our compost isn't that far from the house, but it just makes it a little bit easier. Some of you have watched our previous videos and are aware that we are building our own home. So as we design our kitchen, we are going to create a cabinet that has a pull-out drawer for our trash, recycling, and compost. So how do you make this composting magic happen? You need 4 things. You need brown materials, green materials, air, and water. Brown materials, such as leaves and pine shavings, provide carbon to your pile. Carbon is the energy source for the microorganisms. Green materials, such as grass and food scraps, provide the nitrogen for your pile. Nitrogen is the protein source for the microorganisms and help them to grow. Air and water are also essential to your pile. The moisture content of your pile should be similar to a wrung out sponge. You really don't want your pile to get too dry because that's when the decomposition will stop. You can add air to your pile by turning your pile. This creates a better environment for aerobic microorganisms, which will break down your pile quicker. So I just threw a lot of science at you about composting. The last thing that I want is for you to get analysis paralysis and to keep throwing your food waste in the trash. So let's talk about the topic you've all been waiting for. What can and can't I compost? Let's start with the things that you can compost. So to start, you can compost all fruits and veggies. Here I have a broccoli stem, I have apple core, I have pepper core, tomato core, and I also have an avocado that went bad. Whenever you're composting fruits and veggies, make sure to remove any sticker because those stickers are not going to decompose. Another thing you have to consider is if you go the worm composting route, the worms can't handle all fruits and veggies, so you definitely want to look up a list. The second thing you can compost are coffee grounds. Coffee grounds are a great source of nitrogen. Some people hesitate to put them in their compost because of their acidity, but I really wouldn't worry about that. The third thing that you can compost are eggshells. Eggshells are going to break down slower in your compost, so you might see whole eggshells when you go to use the soil. But if you want to help them break down quicker, you can crush them and then put them in your compost. But we just leave them as is and let them decompose. The fourth thing that you can put in your compost is paper. Whenever you're putting paper in your compost, you want to only use newspaper or white paper. You also want to make sure that you rip it up like I have here, because the paper can get wet and heavy and then it will decompose really, really slowly. So if you're going to go the paper route, you need to make sure it's torn up. Honestly though, I would recommend, if you have a facility that takes paper for recycling, just go that route. There are 3 things that you can compost that I recommend being cautious with. One of those is sawdust. So if you plan to put sawdust in your compost, make sure that the sawdust is not from pressure-treated wood. Pressure-treated wood contains chemicals, and you don't want to introduce that into your compost. The second thing is weeds. So if you plan to put weeds into your compost, you want to make sure that they haven't gone to seed, especially if you're going to be putting that soil in your garden, because next year when you go put it in your garden, you're going to have little tiny weeds popping up everywhere. But if you aren't worried about using the soil, go ahead, put all the weeds you want in there. The third thing is baked goods. So I would limit the amount of baked goods that you're putting in the compost. Some people think you shouldn't put them in the compost at all, but I would rather see them go into the compost, maybe attract a couple pests, and decompose rather than going to the landfill. So now let's talk about the things you can't put in your compost. The first being meat, dairy, and egg products. I know I said that you can put eggshells in the compost, but you cannot put whole eggs. The reason being is that you're going to attract pests with these products, and then you also will have the issue of pathogens being introduced into your compost, and you don't want either of those. The second thing is dog poop or cat poop. You don't want to put your dog or cat poo in the compost, because like the meat and dairy products, you could be introducing pathogens, and then on top of that, you could be introducing parasites. The third thing is glossy paper. I know I said you can recycle newspaper and white paper, but glossy paper cannot be put in the compost because there's chemicals in it. And the last thing is large branches. You don't want to put large branches in your compost because they're going to take a while to decompose. I would recommend putting those on a back area of your property where they can go ahead and decompose but not interfere with the compost. Thank you so much for joining me today. Remember, composting does not need to be hard. All you need is some organic material and a place to put it. Make sure to click the thumbs up if you like this video so other people can find it. Also, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more videos on self-sustainability. Come follow us on our Instagram and Facebook accounts for daily updates. Happy composting!